The message came on a Tuesday morning while Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his coffee in the command center of the Starship Harmony. The silver envelope appeared on his desk with a soft chime, marked with symbols he had never seen before. When he touched it, the envelope opened by itself and projected a hologram into the air. A tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms spoke in perfect English. "Greetings, humans of Earth. You are invited to participate in the Grand Performance Competition of the Galactic Entertainment Consortium. This event happens once every 50 years. The best artists from every known species will compete. The winners receive advanced technology and the honor of cultural exchange with all member worlds." Jake stared at the message as it repeated itself. He called his crew to the command center. Danny Rodriguez arrived first, wiping grease from his hands after working on the engine. Lisa Grant came next, carrying her violin case as always. Helen. Carter walked in last, looking curious about the urgent meeting. "Did we do something wrong?" Danny asked, seeing Jake's serious face. "No, we got invited to something," Jake said. He played the message again. Lisa's eyes went wide. "A galactic competition? They want humans to perform?" "Looks that way," Jake said. "The question is, do we accept?" Helen studied the hologram carefully. "What kind of competition is it exactly?" Jake touched the envelope again, and more information appeared. Each species sends their best performers to something called Spotlight Prime. It's a huge space station built just for this event. Every 50 years, they judge who has the best art, music, dance, or whatever their species does best. "And winners get technology?" Danny asked. "Advanced technology and cultural exchange privileges," Jake read. "It says here that past winners have received faster-than-light travel improvements, medical advances, and communication systems." Lisa set down her violin case. "What do we know about the other species competing?" Jake scrolled through more information. "Let's see. The Zephyrians make music with crystal formations that can change the shape of objects. The Vortari can manipulate time itself as part of their performances. The Nebuloids create colors that most species can't even see." He looked up at his crew. "We're talking about beings with abilities we can barely understand. So what do humans bring to this?" Helen asked quietly. That was the question Jake had been thinking about since the message arrived. Earth had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago. They had basic space travel and simple energy weapons, but nothing compared to species that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. "I don't know," Jake admitted, "but they invited us for a reason." Danny laughed. "Maybe they need someone to fix their engines when they break down." "This is serious, Danny," Lisa said. "If we mess this up, it could make all humans look bad to the galaxy." Helen picked up the holographic display controls. "May I?" Jake nodded, and Helen began reading through the competition rules. It says here that each species can bring up to 50 performers and support crew. They provide transportation to Spotlight Prime and accommodation during the event. "How long does it last?" Jake asked. 2 weeks. 1 week for preparation and rehearsals. 1 week for the actual competition. Lisa opened her violin case and touched the strings gently. "I've been playing since I was 5 years old. I've performed in concert halls across Earth, but competing against beings who can manipulate time and matter? We all feel that way," Helen said. "I've composed music for orchestras, but I can't make crystals sing or change the fabric of reality." Danny sat down heavily in a chair. "I can carry a tune and fix almost anything mechanical, but I'm not sure that's going to impress aliens who can do impossible things." Jake looked at his crew. They were good people and talented in their own ways, but they were right to be worried. How could humans compete against species with abilities that seem like magic? "Let me ask you something," Jake said. "Why do you think they invited us?" "Maybe they felt sorry for us," Danny suggested. "Or maybe they're curious about what humans can do," Lisa said. Helen was still reading the competition information. "It says here that the judging is based on emotional impact, technical skill, and originality. All three categories are weighted equally. Emotional impact, Jake repeated. That's interesting. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Think about it. When you play your violin, Lisa, what happens? People listen. Sometimes they cry or smile or remember things. Exactly. And Helen, when you conduct an orchestra, what do you create? Music that tells a story or expresses feelings. And Danny, when you sing while you work, what happens to the rest of us? Danny smiled a little. You all start humming along even when you don't realize it. Jake nodded. Maybe that's what we bring. Maybe we're not supposed to compete with their technology or supernatural abilities. Maybe we're supposed to show them something different. But what if we're wrong? Lisa asked. What if we get there and embarrass ourselves and all of humanity? Then we'll have tried, Jake said. And we'll learn something about ourselves and about the galaxy. Helen closed the holographic display. I think we should accept the invitation. Really? Danny asked, surprised. Yes, not because I think we can win, but because this is a chance to represent humanity on a galactic stage. Even if we don't win, we can show them who we are. Lisa picked up her violin and played a simple melody. The notes filled the command center with warmth and familiarity. You know what? Helen's right. Maybe it's not about winning. Maybe it's about sharing. Danny stood up and started singing along with Lisa's melody, making up words as he went. We're going to space to play and sing, to show the galaxy what music can bring. Jake laughed. Is that a yes from everyone? Yes. They? All said together. Then I'll send our acceptance. Jake touched the envelope, and a new holographic form appeared. He filled in their names and shipped information. When he finished, the form disappeared with a soft chime. When do we leave? Lisa asked. In 3 days. They're sending coordinates. The spotlight prime and a navigation beacon. Helen smiled. I guess I better start working on some arrangements. And I should tune my violin and practice, Lisa said. What should I do? Danny asked. Keep being yourself, Jake said. I have a feeling that's exactly what we're going to need. As his crew left to prepare, Jake stayed in the command center looking out at the stars. In 3 days, they would travel, farther from Earth than any humans had gone before. They would meet species they had only heard about in reports. And they would try to show the galaxy what it meant to be human. He just hoped it would be enough. The journey to Spotlight Prime took 2 days through hyperspace. Jake had seen pictures of the massive space station, but nothing prepared him for the real thing. It was the size of a small moon, covered in lights that shifted colors constantly. Thousands of ships from different worlds were docked around it like metal flowers around a giant silver tree. Look at the size of that thing, Danny whispered as they approached their assigned docking bay. Lisa pressed her face against the window. And look at all those ships. I've never seen designs like those. Helen was taking notes in a small book. Each ship probably represents a different species. How many do you think are competing? Jake checked their communication screen. The docking controller says there are 47 species registered for this competition. 47? Lisa's voice cracked a little. We're one of 47. That we know about, Jake said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The docking process was handled by automatic systems that guided the Harmony into a berth between 2 alien ships. One looked like it was made of glass and crystal, with no visible metal parts. The other seemed to be built from some kind of living material that pulsed with a soft green light. The welcome packet says we have 6 hours to settle in before the orientation meeting, Jake announced as they gathered their belongings. The station's interior was even more impressive than the outside. The corridors were wide enough for creatures, much larger than humans, and the walls showed moving pictures of past competition performances. Jake and his crew walked slowly, staring at displays that showed impossible things. Is that creature flying without wings? Danny asked, pointing at one display. And that one seems to be singing with light instead of sound. Helen added. Lisa stopped in front of a display showing what looked like a dance performance. These beings are moving through solid walls like they're made of water. Jake checked. Their room assignments. We're in section 12. The map says it's this way. Their quarters were simple but comfortable, with 4 rooms connected to a common area. The furniture could adjust to different body types, and the walls could display images from their home worlds. At least the beds are human size, Danny said. Testing the mattress in his room, Lisa set her violin case on the table and looked around. It's nice, but it feels temporary. Like we're visitors who might not stay long. We are visitors, Helen reminded her. The question is whether we're welcome ones. Jake activated the wall display and found a channel showing live coverage of the competition preparations. They could see other species rehearsing in different areas of the station. Look at this, Jake called the others over. On the screen, a group of crystal beings were creating music by vibrating their bodies at different frequencies. The sound waves were visible as colored patterns in the air, and where the patterns intersected, small objects began to change shape. They're turning metal into flowers, Lisa said in amazement. The display switched to another rehearsal area, where gaseous creatures floated in complex formations. As they moved, they left trails of colors that had no names in human language. The colors seemed to speak directly to the mind, bypassing the eyes entirely. I don't understand how that's even possible, Helen said. Danny pointed at the screen. And I don't understand how we're supposed to compete with that. The next scene showed beings that looked like they were made of starlight, dancing in patterns that bent space around them. Time seemed to slow down and speed up as they moved, creating a performance that existed in multiple moments at once. Maybe. We should watch something else, Lisa suggested quietly. Jake changed the channel to a station information broadcast. A friendly alien voice explained the facilities available to competitors, including practice rooms, equipment rentals, and cultural exchange areas. Cultural exchange areas, Helen repeated. That sounds interesting. Should we go explore? Jake asked. They left their quarters and followed the signs to the cultural exchange section. It was a huge area filled with displays, performances, and meeting spaces where different species could interact. Near the entrance, they saw a group of tall, thin aliens with silver skin talking to some creatures that looked like walking trees. Neither group seemed to understand the other very well, even with translation devices. Excuse me, Jake approached the silver-skinned aliens. Are you having translation problems? One of the aliens turned to him. Yes, human. Our languages express concepts that do not exist in their culture, and their ideas have no equivalent in ours. Jake nodded to his crew. Lisa stepped forward and began playing a simple, cheerful melody on her violin. Both groups of aliens stopped talking and turned to listen. Danny began humming along with the melody, adding harmony. Helen started conducting. Even though there was no orchestra, just moving her hands to help shape the music, something interesting happened. The silver aliens and the tree-like beings began to relax. Their postures changed, becoming less formal and defensive. When Lisa finished playing, both groups were standing closer together. That was pleasant, one of the tree creatures said in a deep, slow voice. Yes, it created a shared experience without requiring translation, agreed a silver alien. How did you do that? Another silver alien asked Jake. We didn't do anything special, Jake said. That's just music. Just music. The tree creature's leaves rustled. You created harmony between strangers without words or shared concepts. That is not just anything. As they walked away, Lisa looked thoughtful. Did you notice what happened there? Those aliens stopped arguing and started cooperating, Danny said. More than that, Helen added. They were communicating in a way they couldn't before. Jake stopped walking. Say that again. They were communicating in a way they couldn't before. Helen repeated. That's it, Jake said excitedly. That's what we bring. What do you mean? Lisa asked. All those performances we watched in our room, they were impressive, but they were one way. The performers did something amazing, and the audience watched. But what we just did was different. Danny caught on. We got the audience to participate. Not just participate, Helen said, understanding now. We got different species to connect with each other. Lisa smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. We made them feel something together. They continued exploring the cultural exchange area, observing more interactions between different species. Most of the time, the aliens stayed in groups with their own kind. When different species tried to interact, they often had problems understanding each other, even with translation technology. Look over there, Helen pointed to a corner where several different groups of aliens were trying to share information about their art forms. They were using holographic displays and translation devices, but everyone looked frustrated. Should we? Jake asked. Why not? Lisa said. They approached the group and Jake introduced them. We're from Earth. Would you mind if we listened to what you're discussing? A blue alien with multiple eyes turned to them. We are trying to understand each other's artistic traditions, but the concepts do not translate well. Maybe we can help. Helen suggested. How? Asked a floating creature that seemed to be made of liquid metal. Instead of answering, Lisa started playing her violin again. This time she played a sad melody that spoke of loss and longing. Danny joined in with a low humming that added depth to the music. One by one, the aliens in the group began to respond. The blue alien's skin changed colors in rhythm with the music. The liquid metal creature shaped itself into flowing forms that matched the melody's rises and falls. Other aliens in the group began moving or changing in ways that showed they were feeling the same emotions the music expressed. When the song ended, the group was quiet for a moment. We all understood that, the blue alien said softly. Without translation, added the liquid metal creature. How is this possible? Asked another alien. Jake looked at his crew and smiled. Maybe that's what we're here to show you. The rehearsal schedule arrived the next morning. Each species had been assigned specific time slots to practice on the main competition stage. The humans were scheduled for the third day, which gave them time to watch other groups rehearse first. Jake and his crew made their way to the massive performance hall. The stage was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was made of some kind of smart material that could change shape, color, and texture instantly. Above it, holographic projectors could create any environment imaginable. The seating area could hold thousands of beings from different worlds. The technical manual for this stage is 300 pages long, Helen said, holding a data pad. 300 pages just to operate a stage? Danny asked. It's not just a stage, Lisa said, reading. Over Helen's shoulder. It responds to neural patterns, emotional states, and even changes in the performer's heartbeat. It's designed to enhance whatever the performer is trying to express. They found seats where they could watch the rehearsals. The first group to hold practice was the Zephyrians, the crystal beings they had seen on the video displays. 5 Zephyrians took the stage, each one looking like a living sculpture made of different colored crystals. As they began their performance, the stage responded immediately. The floor became reflective like a mirror, and the walls created geometric patterns that matched the crystal shapes. The Zephyrians started vibrating at different frequencies. The sounds they made were pure and perfect, like the ringing of the finest bells. But more than that, the sound waves became visible, creating complex patterns in the air that moved like living things. As the performance continued, small objects on the stage began to change. Metal pieces transformed into flowers, rocks became butterflies, and streams of water turned into ribbons of light. The audience of other competitors watched in silence, clearly impressed. How do they do that? Danny whispered. The sound waves are actually changing the molecular structure of matter, Helen explained, reading from her datapad. Their species evolved to communicate through controlled vibrations that can affect the physical world. When the Zephyrians finished, the stage returned to its normal state. The transformed objects remained as they were, proving that the changes had been real. Next came the Vortari, the time-manipulating species. Three beings that looked like they were made of flowing energy took the stage. The stage responded by creating what looked like a star field around them. The Vortari began their performance, and immediately things became strange. They moved in ways that seemed to skip moments, appearing in one place and then suddenly being somewhere else without, crossing the space between. Sometimes they moved so slowly that they seemed frozen, and other times they moved so fast they became blurs. Are they actually changing time, or is it just an illusion? Lisa asked. Jake checked his watch. Look at this. The second hand was moving irregularly, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes backwards. They're manipulating time in this whole area, Helen said in amazement. The performance told some kind of story about the birth and death of stars, with the Vortari showing different moments in a star's life happening at the same time. It was beautiful and confusing and impossible to fully understand. Other species took their turns. The nebuloids created a performance using colors that human eyes could barely see, creating emotions that had no names. A species called the resonance sang with voices that could make the walls of the station vibrate in harmony. By the time their rehearsal slot arrived, Jake and his crew felt very small. Maybe we should just go home, Lisa said as they stood at the entrance to the stage area. We came this far, Jake said. Let's at least try. They walked onto the stage, and immediately screens lit up around them showing technical readouts and options. The stage was waiting for them to tell it what they wanted. How do we even start? Danny asked, looking at all the controls. Helen studied her data pad. It says here that the stage responds to the lead performer's intentions. Lisa, you're our primary musician. Try thinking about what you want the stage to do. Lisa closed her eyes and thought about playing her violin. She imagined a simple setting, maybe a concert hall or a small theater. When she opened her eyes, nothing had happened. Maybe I'm not thinking hard enough, she said. She tried again, concentrating more intensely. Still nothing. Let me try, Helen said. She thought about conducting an orchestra, imagining musicians and instruments around her. The stage flickered slightly, but didn't change. Danny attempted to imagine himself singing in different settings, but the stage remained unresponsive. This is hopeless, Lisa said. The other species just think about what they want, and the stage responds perfectly. We can't even get it to turn on. Jake sat down on the edge of the stage. Maybe that's the problem. What do you mean? Helen asked. All the other species have some kind of special ability. The Zephyrians control matter with sound. The Vortari manipulate time. The stage is designed to work with those kinds of abilities. But we don't have special abilities, Danny said. Exactly. So maybe we shouldn't try to use the stage the way they do. Lisa picked up her violin. What if we just ignore all the technology and play music? Just regular music? Helen asked. Why not? That's what we do best. Lisa raised her violin and began to play a simple folk song from Earth. Her music filled the performance hall clear and pure. The stage didn't respond with visual effects or environmental changes. It just let the music be music. Danny started humming along, and Helen began conducting even though there was no orchestra to conduct. Jake found himself tapping his foot to the rhythm. Something interesting happened in the audience area. Other competitors who had been preparing for their own rehearsals stopped what they were doing and turned to listen. The crystal Zephyrians ceased their vibrating. The energy-based Vortari became still. Species that had been focused entirely on their own performances were now paying attention to the humans. Look, Helen whispered without stopping her conducting. More. And more aliens were entering the performance hall. They weren't coming to rehearse. They were coming to listen. Soon the audience section was half full of beings from dozens of different worlds, all sitting quietly and listening to simple human music. Lisa played for 20 minutes, moving from one song to another. Danny sang when he knew the words, hummed when he didn't. Helen conducted the invisible orchestra that seemed to exist in the music itself. Jake just watched and smiled. When Lisa finally lowered her violin, the alien audience was completely silent. For a moment, then something unprecedented happened. Different species began making sounds of appreciation in their own ways. The Zephyrians chimed softly. The nebuloids pulsed with warm colors. Other species clapped, whistled, or made sounds that the humans couldn't identify but clearly meant approval. "I don't understand," Lisa said. "We didn't do anything special. The stage didn't create any effects. We just played music." An elderly alien with silver scales approached the stage. "May I speak with you?" "Of course," Jake said. "I am Elder Vex of the Judging Council. I have been observing rehearsals for 3 days, and I have seen incredible displays of power, technology, and skill. But this is the first time I have seen a performance that made the audience forget they were different species." "What do you mean?" Helen asked. "Look around you," Elder Vex said. The humans looked at the audience. Aliens who had barely acknowledged each other's existence were now sitting together, talking quietly. Some were trying to hum the melodies they had just heard. Others were moving their bodies in rhythm, even though the music had stopped. "Your performance did something none of the others achieved," Elder Vex continued. "It created unity. Not through power or technology, but through something much rarer." "What's that?" Lisa asked. Elder Vex smiled with his strange alien features. "Simple beauty that everyone can understand." As they left the stage, Jake put his arm around Lisa's shoulders. "I think we just figured out how to compete. By not trying to compete?" Danny asked. "By being ourselves," Helen said. Lisa looked back. At the stage, then at the aliens still lingering in the audience area. "Maybe that's enough." Competition day arrived with great ceremony. The performance hall was packed with thousands of beings from across the galaxy. Representatives from every major civilization had come to witness the event. The lighting was perfect. The sound system was flawless. And the stage technology was ready to enhance whatever the performers could imagine. Jake and his crew sat in the waiting area backstage, watching the other performances on a monitor. The competition had been running for 6 hours, and every act had been more spectacular than the last. The Zephyrians had transformed the entire stage into a crystal garden where flowers of pure sound bloomed and died in perfect harmony. The audience had gasped in wonder as metal became music and music became life itself. The Voitari had created a performance that showed the history of the universe in fast forward, with stars being born and dying in moments while they danced between the seconds. Time itself had become their partner in an impossible waltz. The nebuloids had painted the air with colors that spoke directly to the soul, creating emotions that most species had never felt before. Some audience members had wept at the beauty of feelings they had no words to describe. "How can we follow acts like that?" Lisa asked, holding her violin tightly. "By remembering what happened during our rehearsal," Jake said. "We're not here to compete with their technology. We're here to share something different." Danny was pacing back and forth. "But what if the judges don't understand? What if they think we're just primitive compared to all this?" Helen was making final notes on her composition sheets. "Then we'll have been true to ourselves. That has to count for something." An official with blue skin and too many arms approached them. "Earth performers, you're next. Please prepare to take the stage." Jake looked at his crew. "Ready?" "No," Lisa said. "But let's do it anyway." They walked onto the stage together. The performance hall was so large that the back rows seemed to disappear into darkness. Thousands of eyes, sensors, and other forms of perception focused on them. The stage waited, ready to respond to their commands and transform into whatever they needed. Jake stepped forward to the center of the stage. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all species, we are here representing Earth and humanity. We don't have the ability to change matter or manipulate time. We can't create new colors or speak directly to your minds. But we can share something with you that comes from the heart of what makes us human." He nodded to his crew. "This is our Story. Lisa raised her violin and began to play. The melody was simple and sad, speaking of loneliness and longing. It was the sound of humanity looking up at the stars and wondering if they were alone in the universe. The stage remained simple and dark, lit only by a single spotlight on Lisa. No special effects, no holographic displays, just a human woman. And her violin sharing the ancient fear of being alone. As the melody continued, Danny began to hum softly, adding depth and warmth to the music. His voice spoke of hope finding its way through the darkness, of the belief that somewhere out there, someone was listening. Helen raised her hands and began conducting an orchestra that existed only in the music itself. Under her guidance, the simple melody grew richer and more complex, but never lost its essential humanity. The stage began to respond, but not in the way it had for other performers. Instead of creating fantastic visuals or impossible effects, it simply amplified the emotion in the music. The lighting grew warmer, the acoustics became perfect, and somehow the entire hall felt smaller and more intimate. Lisa's violin sang of humanity's first steps into space, of the wonder and terror of discovering they were not alone. The melody spoke of making contact with other species, of learning that the universe was vast and full of incredible beings. Danny's voice grew stronger, singing wordlessly of the joy of discovery and the fear of being found wanting. His melody wove around Lisa's, creating harmonies that spoke of friendship offered across the darkness between stars. Helen's conducting brought in imaginary instruments that seemed to exist in the hearts of the listeners. Some audience members found themselves humming along without realizing it. Others moved slightly in their seats, keeping time with the rhythm. The music changed, becoming more complex as it told the story of humanity's journey to this moment. It spoke of doubt and determination, of feeling small in a universe of giants, of the courage required to share your heart with strangers. But then something unexpected happened. The audience began to participate. It started with a single Zephyrian, who began to chime softly in harmony with Lisa's violin. The sound was beautiful, adding crystal clarity to the human melody without overwhelming it. A Vortari joined in, not manipulating time, but simply existing in the same moment as the music, adding their voice to the growing chorus. The nebuloids began to glow softly, their colors matching the emotions in the music rather than trying to create new ones. One by one, other species in the audience found ways to contribute. Some hummed, others clapped. Many simply swayed to the rhythm. The performance became a conversation between the humans on stage and the thousands of beings in the audience. Lisa played with tears in her eyes as she realized what was happening. The music was no longer just their story. It was becoming everyone's story, the universal tale of reaching out across the darkness to find connection. Danny's voice soared, singing of the moment when loneliness ends and community begins. His song spoke of the discovery that differences in appearance, ability, and origin didn't matter when hearts beat in the same rhythm. Helen conducted not just her imaginary orchestra, but somehow the entire audience, bringing together dozens of species in a harmony that had never existed before. The stage technology, designed to enhance and amplify performer abilities, was doing something it had never done before. Instead of creating artificial effects, it was simply allowing the natural magic of shared emotion to fill the space. As the performance reached its climax, the humans told the story of their arrival at this competition. The music spoke of their fear of not being good enough, of being too simple, too primitive, too ordinary. But then the melody changed one final time, becoming a celebration of the discovery that ordinary could be extraordinary when it brought people together. Lisa's final notes rang out across the hall, simple and pure and perfectly human. Danny's voice faded to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the vast space. Helen's conducting brought the invisible orchestra to a gentle close. The silence that followed was complete. Thousands of beings from dozens of worlds sat in perfect quiet, processing what they had just experienced. Then, slowly, the applause began. But it wasn't just applause. It was every species expressing appreciation in their own way, creating a symphony of gratitude that filled the hall with warmth and joy. Jake looked at his crew, all of them smiling through their tears. They had done it. They had shared humanity's story with the galaxy, and the galaxy had listened. More than that, they had proven that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't technology or supernatural ability. It was the simple desire to connect with others, to share emotions and experiences, to remind each other that none of them were truly alone. The performance was over, but Jake had a feeling that humanity's real journey was just beginning. The judging process took much longer than anyone expected. Usually, the panel of 12 judges from different worlds could reach a decision within 2 hours. But as the 4th hour passed, worried murmurs began spreading through the audience. And competitor areas. Jake and his crew waited in their quarters, too nervous to eat or sleep. Through their window, they could see other competitor ships preparing to leave. Some species were confident they had won. Others seemed resigned to defeat. The humans just felt confused. "Do you think we did something wrong?" Lisa asked, still holding her violin. "The audience seemed to like it," Danny said. "I've never heard applause like that before." Helen was reading updates on the competition newsfeed. "It says here that the judges are having difficulty reaching a consensus. Apparently, this has never happened before in the history of the competition." Jake was watching the news coverage on the wall display. A reporter with silver skin and multiple eyes was interviewing various audience members about the performances. They had seen. "The Zephyrian crystal transformation was technically perfect," said one alien. "But I keep thinking about that simple human melody." Another alien added, "The Vortari time manipulation was incredible, but the human performance made me feel something I had never felt before." "Turn up the sound," Helen said. The reporter was now interviewing Elder Vex, the judge who had spoken to them after their rehearsal. "Elder Vex, can you comment on the delay in reaching a judgment? This competition has clear rules." Elder Vex sighed carefully. "We judge based on technical skill, originality, and emotional impact. The challenge we face is that different performances excelled in different categories in ways we have never seen before." "Can you be more specific?" "The Zephyrians demonstrated the highest level of technical skill ever recorded. Their matter transformation abilities created effects that many thought impossible. The Vortari showed complete originality, creating art forms that exist outside normal space and time." "And the humans?" Elder Vex paused before answering. "The humans achieved something in the emotional impact category that we are still trying to understand." "What do you mean?" "In 500 years of competition history, we have never seen a performance that caused spontaneous audience participation across species lines. The humans somehow created a shared emotional experience that transcended cultural and biological differences." The reporter leaned forward. "Are you saying they might win?" "I am saying that they have forced us to reconsider what victory means in this competition." Jake muted the display. "What does that mean?" "I think it means they don't know how to judge us," Helen said. A soft chime indicated someone was at their door. Jake opened it to find a small floating alien with tentacles instead of arms. "I am Secretary Plix from the Judging Council." "You?" "I requested to appear before the panel for questioning." "Questioning?" Lisa asked nervously. "This is normal procedure when clarification is needed," Secretary Plix explained. "Please follow me." They walked through corridors filled with other competitors and their support teams. Many of the aliens they passed watched them with curiosity. Some nodded respectfully. Others seemed confused or even annoyed. The judging chamber was a circular room with the 12 judges seated around a curved table. Each judge represented a different major galactic civilization. At the center of the room was a single chair. "Please sit," Elder Vex said, gesturing to the chair. Jake sat down while his crew stood behind him. The judges all focused their various forms of attention on him. "We need to understand your performance," said a judge who looked like a living tree. What technology did you use to create such widespread emotional response? We didn't use any technology, Jake answered honestly. Just music. Impossible, said a judge made of crystalline material similar to the Zephyrians. Our sensors detected emotional manipulation across 47 different species simultaneously. This requires advanced neural interface technology. We don't have neural interface technology, Helen said. We just played music the way humans have always played music. A gaseous judge floating in a containment field spoke next. Perhaps you use subliminal frequency manipulation or pheromone distribution. No, Danny said. We just sang and played. Instruments. The judges looked at each other in ways that suggested confusion and concern. Let me ask a different question, Elder Vex said. What was your intended goal for the performance? Jake thought carefully before answering. We wanted to share our story, to show you who humans are and how we see the universe. And the audience participation? Was that planned? No, that surprised us as much as anyone. A judge with multiple heads asked, do all humans have this ability to create emotional connection across species? I don't know, Jake said. We're the first humans to perform for a galactic audience. This presents a problem, said the crystalline judge. In technical skill, you rank very low compared to other competitors. In originality, you rank moderately, as music and emotional expression are not new concepts. But in emotional impact, yes? Jake prompted. You have achieved something unprecedented in competition history, Elder Vex finished. The judges spent several minutes communicating with each other in languages and methods the humans couldn't understand. Finally, Elder Vex spoke again. We have reached a decision, but it requires explanation. The traditional winner of this competition is the species that demonstrates the most advanced artistic and technical achievement. By those standards, the Zephyrians are the clear victors. Jake felt his heart sink. I understand. However, Elder Vex continued, your performance has revealed a gap in our evaluation criteria. We have always assumed that the highest form of art is that which displays the most advanced technical skill or the most unusual abilities. And now? Helen asked. Now we question whether we have been measuring the wrong things, said the tree-like judge. Your performance suggests that the highest form of art might be that which creates the deepest connection between beings. The gaseous judge added, the question before us is whether we should change 5 centuries of tradition based on what we witness today. What are you proposing? Jake asked. We are proposing to create a new category, Elder Vex announced. The Zephyrians will receive the Traditional Excellence Award for their technical mastery. But you will receive the first ever Universal Harmony Award for achievement in cross-species emotional connection. Jake looked back at his crew. Lisa was smiling, Danny was nodding enthusiastically, and Helen was taking notes as if this was the most important moment in human history. But there's more, Elder Vex continued. The response to your performance has created an unprecedented demand. 17 different civilizations have submitted formal requests for cultural exchange programs with humanity. They want to learn more about your approach to artistic expression. What does that mean? Jake asked. It means that while you may not have won the traditional competition, you have achieved something far more valuable. You have opened doors between worlds that have never been opened before. The Crystal Judge added, we are prepared to offer humanity permanent observer status in the Galactic Entertainment Consortium, with the right to host cultural exchange programs and establish performance tours throughout member worlds. Jake stood up, feeling overwhelmed. We need to discuss this as a crew. Of course, Elder Vex said. But first, let me ask you one more question. Do you believe other humans could achieve similar results? Jake thought about all the musicians, singers, and artists back on Earth. I think humans have been connecting with each other through music for as long as we've existed. If we can do it with aliens, then yes, I think other humans could do it too. Elder Vex smiled in his alien way. Then perhaps this competition has found something more valuable than a winner. Perhaps it has found a bridge between worlds. 3 months after the competition, Jake stood on the observation deck of the Harmony, watching the lights of the Endorian system grow larger ahead of them. This was their 10th performance since leaving Spotlight Prime, and each show had been more successful than the last. Hard to believe how much has changed, Lisa said, joining him at the window. She carried her violin case as always, but now it was decorated with small gifts from alien audiences across the galaxy. Remember when we thought we might embarrass all of humanity? Danny laughed, carrying a cup of coffee that smelled like the spices from Vortari space. Now we're booked solid for the next 2 years. Helen approached with a data pad showing their schedule. The Crystalline Collective wants us to perform at their Unity Festival next month. That's a gathering that happens once every century, and they've never invited off-world performers before. Jake smiled as he watched more ships join their convoy. Word had spread quickly about the humans who could make aliens feel things they had never felt before. Now, everywhere they went, other species followed just to hear them perform. Look at that, Danny pointed out the window. Surrounding the Harmony were dozens of ships from different worlds. Zephyrian crystal vessels flew alongside Vortari energy ships. Nebuloid cloud formations moved in harmony with solid metal constructs from species they were still learning about. It looked like a parade of the galaxy's most diverse civilizations. They're all coming to the show tonight, Helen said. The Endorians told me they've never had so many different species visit their system at once. The communication system chimed, and Jake activated it. This is Captain Morrison. Jake, this is Elder Vex calling from the Galactic Council ship. May we speak privately? Of course. Come aboard whenever you're ready. 20 minutes later, Elder Vex materialized in their meeting room, along with Secretary Plix and 2 other council members Jake didn't recognize. We bring news from the Galactic Entertainment Consortium, Elder Vex began. The response to your performances has exceeded all expectations. In what way? Jake asked. Secretary Plix answered. Trade negotiations between species that have been stalled for decades are suddenly moving forward. Diplomatic relations are improving across the galaxy. We're seeing cooperation between civilizations that have barely spoken to each other for centuries. How is that related to our performances? Lisa asked. One of the new council members, a being that looked like living starlight, spoke in a voice like wind chimes. Your music has created something unprecedented. Species that attend your performances begin to understand each other in ways they never had before. We're just playing music, Danny said. You are creating empathy, Elder Vex explained. When different species hear your performances together, they begin to feel similar emotions at the same time. This shared experience breaks down barriers that diplomacy and trade agreements cannot touch. Helen leaned forward. Are you saying our concerts are affecting galactic politics? We are saying your concerts are changing galactic civilization. The Starlight being replied. The consortium has received formal requests from 43 different worlds to establish permanent human cultural centers. Jake felt overwhelmed. 43 worlds want us to live there. Not just you, Secretary Plix said. They want human musicians, artists, and performers. They want to learn how to create the kind of emotional connections you demonstrate. But we don't know how we do it, Lisa said. It just happens naturally when we play music, which is exactly why it works, Elder Vex said. You are not trying to manipulate emotions or control responses. You are simply sharing genuine feelings through your art. This authenticity is something most species have forgotten how to achieve. The Starlight being continued. We have a proposal. The Galactic Council wants to establish the Human Cultural Exchange Program. Earth would become the center for artistic and emotional education for the entire galaxy. What would that involve? Jake asked. Human teachers would travel to different worlds to share your approaches to music and emotional expression. Alien students will come to Earth to learn directly from human artists. Most importantly, regular performance tours like the one you Our current Leon would become a permanent part of galactic society. Helen was taking notes rapidly. This sounds like it would change everything for humanity. It would change everything for everyone, Elder Vex said. But the choice is yours. Humanity was invited to one competition. We are now offering you a chance to become teachers for the galaxy. Jake looked at his crew. They had started this journey just hoping not to embarrass themselves. Now they were being asked to help reshape galactic civilization. Can we have some time to think about it? Jake asked. Of course. But I should mention that tonight's performance will be broadcast live to over 200 worlds. The galaxy is watching to see what humanity will do next. After the council members left, Jake and his crew sat in silence for several minutes. 200 worlds, Lisa finally said. All watching us, Danny added. All waiting to see if we can do it again. Helen finished. Jake stood up and walked to the window. The convoy of alien ships had grown even larger. He could see beings from dozens of different species moving between the vessels, talking and sharing. Experiences in ways that Elder Vex said hadn't happened in centuries. You know what I think, Jake said. What? Lisa asked. I think we already made our choice the day we accepted the original invitation. We said we wanted to show the galaxy who humans are. If this is who we are, then this is what we should do. Danny grinned. You mean become the galaxy's music teachers? I mean become the galaxy's friends, Jake corrected. The music is just how we do it. Lisa opened her violin case and touched the strings gently. It's scary to think that so much depends on us. It doesn't depend on just us, Helen said. It depends on all of humanity. If this works, it means every human musician, every artist, every person who has ever hummed a song could potentially help different species understand each other. Jake nodded. And if it doesn't work, at least we tried to make the universe a little less lonely. That evening, they took the stage in the Andorian Performance Hall. The audience was the most diverse they had ever seen, with representatives from species they had never even heard of before. The lights dimmed, and Jake stepped forward to address the crowd. Friends from across the galaxy, he began, when we first left Earth, we thought we were going to a competition. We learned instead that we were beginning a conversation. Tonight, let's continue that conversation together. Lisa raised her violin and began to play. The melody was new, composed by Helen during their journey to Andorian space. It spoke of discovery and wonder, of the joy of meeting new friends, and the excitement of exploring unknown worlds. Danny joined in with harmonies that welcomed everyone in the audience, regardless of what planet they came from or what they looked like. Helen conducted an orchestra that seemed to include every being in the hall. As the music filled the space, something magical happened once again. The audience began to participate, each species adding their own voices to the growing symphony. But this time, Jake noticed something different. The aliens weren't just responding to the human music. They were responding to each other. A Zephyrian harmony encouraged the Vortari rhythm, which inspired a nebuloid color display, which motivated other species to join in. The humans had started the conversation, but now the entire galaxy was talking. When the performance ended, Jake looked out at the audience and realized they had done something more than entertain. They had created a moment when hundreds of different species felt like they belonged to the same community. Thank you, Jake said to the crowd. Thank you for reminding us that music sounds best when everyone sings along. Later, as they prepared for bed, Lisa stood once more at the observation window. The convoy of ships around them had grown to over 100 vessels. They moved together through space like a traveling city, bound together by the simple idea that differences could be harmony instead of discord. Jake, Lisa said softly. Yeah? I think we became what the title promised. What do you mean? Lisa smiled as she watched the lights of dozens of worlds traveling together through the darkness. We became super troopers, not because we're better than anyone else, but because we helped everyone else become part of the same troop. Jake joined her at the window and watched the greatest show in the galaxy continue its journey through the stars. They had set out to compete and instead had learned to collaborate. They had tried to win and instead had taught the galaxy how to sing together. Somewhere behind them, Earth was receiving reports of their success and preparing to send more musicians. More teachers, more humans ready to share the simple gift of making others feel less alone. And somewhere ahead of them, new worlds were waiting to discover that the universe was full of friends they just hadn't met yet.